Thank you. Thank you for attending another press conference. Let me start by congratulating all the top performers at the CXE and CAPE examinations. All of Guyana is proud of you, and on behalf of the People's Progressive Party, we wish you continued success in your studies and all your endeavors. I think I should start off by addressing the key issue that I spoke about briefly yesterday at an impromptu press conference, namely the ruling of the Chief Justice on the issue that was before her. And so today, and since last night, you've had various spins put on the ruling. And so I just want to, in a very practical way, go through what the ruling means to us, and then Guyanese can make their own judgment as to whether we succeeded, what our objective was to go to the court, and whether we succeeded in achieving those objectives. So clearly, and when I said we, because we joined the application made by Mr. Christopher Ram. After he went ahead and filed, we did not think that the PPP needed to file separately, so our lawyers joined his application. And he asked for a date for the elections to be named, that is September 18th. We had requested the Caribbean Court of Justice to also name a date for the elections. And we had argued that we were prepared to accept that the 3 months outlined in the Constitution, Article 106.7, should start ticking from June 18th, given that that was the date that the CCJ made the ruling. This was a major concession on the part of the People's Progressive Party when it made that request to the CCJ. We could, and this was all in the spirit of moving forward, because we could have easily asked the court to declare that the government was unconstitutional and a usurper since March 21st. Because once the CCJ declared that the no confidence motion was validly passed on December 21st, then, and that Article 106 was triggered, those are in the words of the CCJ, it meant elections in 3 months unless there was an extension, and there was no extension by the National Assembly. So that meant elections ought to have been held by March 21st, and the CCJ itself said that. The CCJ said elections ought to have been held by March 21st. The PPP sought to be reasonable because you could not go back to March 21st to hold elections. So we said, oh, okay, let the timeline start ticking from June 18th when the CCJ made the final ruling. And the CCJ recognized that, and they said the timeline is outlined in the Constitution. In the Constitution. It is not for us to name a date. It is not that Article 106 is triggered. The language of the Constitution is unambiguous. It must be honored with integrity by all the players. President Granger has refused to honor the ruling of the CCJ and the Constitution of Guyana. The language is not unambiguous. I plan to get some kindergarten kids to come here and read the Constitution for the president. I plan to do that one day, a press conference. I'm going to bring them to the press conference with me, and have them read the two sections of the two Article 106.6 and 106.7, what they mean. And I'm sure the kids would understand this, except this government and President Granger. And so, for us, for me personally, the timeline is set by the Constitution. The government has to honor it. So when I see apologists like Lincoln Lewis saying, oh, there's no timeline for elections, oh, the court did not give a date, as though the constitutional requirement disappeared. As though the constitutional requirement disappeared or the court could have bargained that away. Nobody can bargain away the constitutional provisions. Not this government, not the court, not the PPP, not anyone. And so the constitutional imperative outlined here still very, very valid. And now that actually the ruling yesterday in not naming a date for elections, but Mr. Christopher Ram requested, which is June 18th, September 18th rather, the Chief Justice reiterated the position of the CCJ and said it's not for the courts to do this. But I wish to remind that elections ought to have been held by March 21st, and there's been no extension. So my new position in the PPP, and we, based on this ruling, is that since there was no extension for the March 21st elections to be held by March 21st, within that period, then since March 21st of this year, the government has been practicing unconstitutional rule. It has been a usurper of power in Guyana. It is acting outside of the provision of our Constitution. We were prepared to allow this to happen after September 18th. To be generous and say after September 18th, then you go into unconstitutional rule. But now on the basis, if they think this ruling helped them, well, it really reiterated what we know, but we're prepared to move on, that the government has been a usurper of power since March 21st. And therefore, any act committed after that period, any act that they committed would be deemed null and void. So I saw they're extending now the oil contract. I saw CGX got an extension, and I want to say to CGX, that extension is not valid that you got, because it's done in a period when we have a caretaker government. I've already made it clear that the daily sale of land and all of these things that are practicing through not public processes, etc., they're all illegal. And not from the current date or from September 18th, but now from March 21st. So for the Lincoln Lewises of the world who believe, and the TUC and some other people, WPA, who believe now that there is no date set, as though we can go on forever. You see, the court didn't set a date for elections, so suddenly the no confidence motion disappeared. The constitutional requirement has disappeared. We can go on forever. We can go to 2040 then. Recall in the Chief Justice's ruling, she said, GCOM must understand that they're not working in a normal electoral cycle. And that should send a strong signal. A normal electoral cycle is when the president's powers are unfettered by a no confidence motion. He has the discretion to call elections anytime within the 5 years. This is an abnormal election cycle. It's been truncated by the no confidence motion. And so our position, so that's one, that's on timeline. So I've seen these I've seen real set of sycophants talking about, oh, the court, and claiming it a victory for them. But the court didn't set a timeline, and as though the Constitution doesn't set the timeline. The Constitution has set the timeline, and it has been breached by this government several times. That's the first point. So for me, either way, not naming a date, the CCJ declined to name the date too. So in Mr. Ram's application to have September 18th as the date named by the court said that this is for the executive to deal with. You either comply with the Constitution or you get an extension in time on the basis of a vote in the National Assembly of 2/3 of the members. And we've already made that clear. There shall be no extension. We are not voting to extend the life of this government, period. That's it. So there shall be no extension. Therefore, the 3 months have expired several times now, and they're a usurper. That's the first point. Now, the second point is that what happened? The no confidence motion was passed. GCOM, as a creature of the Constitution, should start preparing for elections. GCOM then decided, the Secretariat presented two options to the Commission. One, to say, go to claims and objection on the current list, or using the current NRR to refresh the list and prepare for elections, which will last 3 months. Or the second option is go to house-to-house registration, which would last 290 days. This was in February, March of this year. Those two options were presented by the Secretariat to the Commission. The government commissioners proposed a motion that they must choose house-to-house. And the chairman, the legal chairman, voted in favor of that. And so they chose, although they knew that no confidence motion was passed and they should be ready, they chose the option that is the longest path to the preparation of the elections. And we have argued, if you go pursue house to house on the basis of that timeline, you're having elections next year. So we were taken aback after the CCJ joined GCOM as a party to the proceedings, and then the CCJ made its final ruling on July 12th, and then suddenly the Secretariat whipped out an order signed by Justice Patterson and gazetted on the 11th of June, which was a secret order, nobody knew about it, to start house to house on July 20th, after the CCJ had ruled. At that time, the chairman had resigned, so there was no commission. So Mr. Patterson, Mr. Lowenfield started it. His own advisor said, don't, it's inconsistent with the ruling of the CCJ, but he persisted. And we had to find a way of stopping it, because we knew that the house-to-house registration was going to create a new database. Totally, they were scrapping the old NRR and doing house-to-house visits to create a new national register of registrants. So once you don't get registered now, you're not going to be on that database. So we knew that that will disenfranchise thousands of people, because it would be a rushed process. Two, that many Guyanese who travel abroad, not at home, in the interior working, etc., they will come off the list. Three, we know that there were thousands of people, they can do it deliberately to skip, like in PPP strongholds. We've seen this in the past, in other registration cycles. Skip many houses. So when the NRR comes out, many thousands of people's names are not on the list. Four, they could have used it to register people who shouldn't be registered, non-Guyanese and stuff. We have a couple of cases which we're going to make public soon. So, and then, so that was the exercise that we had to stop because it would deregister thousands of Guyanese, of people of every race, every political persuasion, not just PPP supporters. But if you live in South Georgetown, you're in the interior, you can't come out back, you're gone. You're not getting to vote. You're not on the voters list. So that was what we wanted to stop. So we went to the court. Now, what the Chief Justice ruled, there are two types of house-to-house activities. And I'm explaining this because I want people to understand. So there is house-to-house verification. So an RO who heads a registration office in continuous registration, after you go in, and there have been several cycles of continuous registration to update the list. So you go in now, you're a new registrant. You go in, you make a claim, you're over 14 years, and to get on the NRR. They then they're required, in the presence of scrutineers, to make house-to-house visits to verify that your name you're valid before you get onto the NRR. But that is in the context of new registrants. So house-to-house visits or verification, as the Chief Justice said, is legal in the context of adding new registrants to the list. But house-to-house registration to remove people from the list and create a new database is illegal. Is illegal now, and that is what people don't. You cannot use house-to-house registration to remove them from the NRR once they are registered already. So that is the crucial thing for us. So let me give a couple of examples. So I'm registered, I'm on the NRR, all of us, and we voted the last elections, people over 14 years old, because the NRR, you have people 14 and above, they then extract their voters list from that, and we're on the list. So assuming now you didn't get registered, they come to your home under the current system that they were using, this house-to-house, they come to your home, and you're not at home, or you don't register, then what happens? Your name disappears from that database. You can't vote. Under what the Chief Justice ruled is that if they come to your house and you say, using a Ramjatan expression, leave, or you say, I'm already on the list, or you say, now, I'm not at home. You tell the people, I'm not at home, or the person has gone into the interior, or they're abroad, they still can't remove your name. They can't remove your name from the database. And that is what? Because the Constitution of Guyana says that the only criteria for being registered are 18 years and Guyanese. You can't deregister people. And that is what we wanted. You cannot deregister people now. You can't go because a man refuses to register. So the exercise now is a waste of time. It's a waste of money. It's futile. Because even if people refuse to register, their names would still be on the national list, register of registrants. They can't remove your name. And that is why we started off saying that that was unconstitutional. Removing people's name, scrapping the old NRR is unconstitutional because it would mean it runs in the face of, or flies in the face of Article 159 of our Constitution. That is what we are arguing, that house to create an NRR to deregister people is unconstitutional, not that house-to-house activity as a method of verification of names is illegal, unconstitutional. So the Chief Justice ruled as a method for verification, it's provided for in the law. But when you use house-to-house registration to deregister people, to scrap the existing database, to remove them from the database, that is not constitutional. That would be unconstitutional. And so the activity they're pursuing now is a waste, because if you come there, and I say, I'm not registering, but what is, my name will be on the NRR. They can't remove it. And my name will be on the voters list. And that's what we want. Or somebody is sick or something like and not at home. They can't do that. And that is what we wanted to stop. Deregistering thousands of our people. Now, we argued that what about some people who are on the list, who shouldn't be really on the list, Then why don't we strengthen polling day processes by adding more biometric features to the list, by adding fingerprint readers, by putting in more party scrutineers within the polling places, by getting more international observers in every polling place to ensure only people who are eligible to vote on that day, that they vote. That's what we've been arguing all along. And to bring in the international community very early in terms of quality control. So what victory are they talking about? Oh, the headline is Blair's all the headline, house-to-house registration legal. As a tool for verification, it's legal. But as a tool to deregister people, which is what they were pursuing now, to scrap the database, it's illegal. You can't use house-to-house registration to scrap the database. That's the difference, and I hope that it gets reflected in the media in that sense, and not just look at what was said, that the nuances of what we are trying to achieve. The first time in my life, for a long time, not the first time in my life, but a long time that I've seen, actually, the Chronicle said something very sensible. But process, it says house-to-house legit, but process must not deregister eligible Guyanese. That's what we were fighting. Even the Chronicle conceded that. Must not deregister eligible Guyanese. That is what they were doing. The house-to-house they are doing now is to deregister. You don't register, you off the list. You have a legitimate reason for not being at home, you're off the list. That is what we achieve. But process must not deregister eligible Guyanese. And so this is, for me, that makes the whole house-to-house exercise useless now. Because if you can't take my name off, why are you coming to register me again? I am already registered. Why are you going to come and register me again? My name is there and you can't take it off. Does it now make sense that the exercise has to be scrapped and then move to claims and objections, where we can then have the new registrants, people who are not on the list, go into the registration centers and get their names, get all the political parties to take in their supporters to the registration centers to get the new registrants on the list, and then do the house-to-house to verify the new registrants, that they're actual before they get onto the database. That is what is required at this point in time, and urgently so, because we're not operating in a normal election cycle, as the Chief Justice pointed out. So where's the victory in all of that? I've seen, I asked someone to print that Demar Waves thing. Did you print it? You get it? The Attorney General just give me this. I was just scanning it last night. He said something about, he said lawyers would have to study the Chief Justice's ruling, especially since overseas voting was abolished and residency was introduced in the Representation of People's Act. This is the Attorney General talking pure garbage. We're not saying the overseas voting in the past was that you voted overseas. You voted overseas. So there's none of that now. You can't vote. The Chief Justice said if your name is on the list, you have to come back to your Guyana if you're abroad and vote in that division where your name is. It's not overseas voting. These are people who may be a student abroad or you've gone on a vacation. If you're now under this registration, you're on a vacation, you come back after the registration, after October 30th, your name is off. You're not voting, you're not getting to vote. Now they're saying you can come back and vote in the registration division. Not to introduce overseas voting again where they used to have ballot boxes in the embassies and they used to get 115% of the people on the list there. You should just look at one documentary that was done by the BBC. It's called The Trail of the Vanishing Voters. And that will tell you how overseas voting was done under the PNC, when they used to get super majorities. You just look at that documentary, it was done in the 70s. And so imagine this Attorney General can't even interpret the decision of the Chief Justice. But there is spin now. As far as we're concerned, we achieved the purpose of what we set out to do. That is that not to have Guyanese being deregistered by this APNU government. They would have done this, develop a flawed list, left out thousands of Guyanese, added in some fake names, and then rushed the elections through. That was their aim. We know that. That's been discussed at Congress Place. This here has thwarted that. They can't touch the database, the NRR. That was being verified for 10 years through 15 and updated through 15 cycles of continuous registration, several cross-matching of fingerprints, that we've used it for 4 elections with no complaints. That's the list that they were going to scrap in favor of holding elections on a list from a database yet to be produced, that will produce next year. That is what we won here. It's a momentous victory. People don't see that. It's momentous, and it's not for PPP. It's for the Guyanese electorate, decent people, every voter, that battle is won here. And so imagine you scrapping a solid database that you developed for so many years. Their commissioners didn't have a problem with it. Lowenfield said it's a great database. When they said the president said 200,000 bloated, he said that's speculative. We could do claims and objection on it. In favor of one to be created, this Housetohouse, sometime year-end or next year. We don't know what the quality will be. And then you will hold elections on that. Just imagine what they were trying to achieve. So this is a stage fight. Guyanese have to understand this is the old PNC we're dealing with. Young people have to go back and read about the excesses, the 3 periods of undemocratic rule, and what used to take place at GCOM. In my village, under the PNC, I would see 90% voted, 95% PPP. When the results come out, it's the other way around. 95% is voted APNU. The APNU will get at a public meeting 2 persons in my village, and then they will get 95, 97% of the votes. They used to take the ballot boxes, take them to a center, and they just switch the ballot boxes. People used to find wads of ballot in the boxes, wrapped up with rubber bands. They used to throw away the ballot boxes. That is why the battle we won in 1990, counting voting at the place of poll, helped to avoid that, because you don't have to collect all the boxes and take them to a counting center like either in the army compound or somewhere else. So people need to understand the nature, and this is a geriatric government. So the same people from the past are still there, and they remember these things fondly. You know, they think they can transport 1970 and 1980 methods of rigging into a 21st century setting, but they don't cater for this generation, and they don't cater for the resilience of our people and about the mass media now. They don't cater. Everything is being exposed on a minute-by-minute basis. And so that is what they were trying to achieve here. And we've thwarted that. Not for the PPP, but for Guyana. Because if this group can do that to us, imagine if President Granger can read the Constitution, and which is clear to every Guyanese, and claim it doesn't say anywhere that the president and the cabinet must resign. And say that with a straight face. And say, I will respect the CCJ ruling, but then thwart it. If you can't respect the Constitution and what is so plainly written in the Constitution, how could you respect any of us? Anything how can we believe you to fulfill any of your promises when you can act in that manner? And this is what we people have to contend with, whether you're PPP supporter or not, because you have a government, a little cabal, that will deny even what is so plainly written. It's bad for our freedom. Freedom. No government should be allowed to behave like this, because we're talking about individual freedoms now as Guyanese, as individual freedom. So this is not a PPP fight. And so once again, I'm hoping that the nuances about what took place yesterday and what we were struggling to achieve, we have practically achieved it. They can't deregister you. They can't deregister you as Guyanese anymore. They can't do that. And it's ruled illegal to deregister people. And the date, well, the Constitution. We don't need a court to set the date. Constitution sets the timeline. I just want to go through a couple of other things that we would see in the normal election cycle. So imagine the WPA, all 5 members of the WPA, that's the national membership, all 5 of them issue this press release. So the same number that they issue the press release is the total votes in the whole country, 5 of them. And 5 from the bygone era to another era. So they said that the PPP must return to Parliament to facilitate the desired extension of the life of government, and that the refusal will tarnish the party's image. Imagine they want to facilitate the desired extension. Desired by whom? This corrupt cabal that is just raping the resources. You will see the first month in office, we're promising that we will outline to the Guyanese public all these things that have been done. It will shock the hell out of everyone about what's taking place now. That's what they're doing, busy hustling. They're using this timeline to just hustle and to make new promises. Pure hustle on every level. And this is at the ministerial, at the cabinet level, and their friends and family. It's a big hustle now. That is what we must facilitate their desire to steal more. This is what the WPA wants, and to disrespect the Constitution. And that will tarnish our image if we don't do that. Imagine the barefacedness of these people. And then they said Guyana should become tired of the PPP delay tactics. We're trying to delay the elections now. Imagine every day not every day, but every week we're protesting against Granger to say, call the elections now, respect the Constitution. Let's go to the polls. Let the people of Guyana determine. And that Guyana is tired of the PPP delaying tactics. This is the WPA. But this is the same people like David Hines and the others who are enjoying the sweet. The sweet. And by the way, I saw that the minister acted the commission of inquiry, and I must thank Mr. Carberry for doing a professional job, because he said that the minister exceeded her authority. But it had nothing to do with substance of why the minister fired those 3 people at the office of the president. That is the WPA minister. What's her name again? Some Sarabu. Sarabu. She just went in and fired the people. You know why? Because they believe that the scholarships that Simona Broom's kids got, and they got $20 million from the office of the president, transferred into their accounts, $20 million for these scholarships that they didn't go through a competitive process to get, nor were they national scholars. Yet they got that. That there are other ministers and relatives who got major deals of this nature. And they thought the people in there gave us the information. But the information did not come from there. The whistleblower was from elsewhere. That is why they fired the accountant too. Not just the head of the department, but the accountant. And came in trying to cover up the corruption there. And now the commission of inquiry has been launched. The people are reinstated. But guess what has happened, from what I heard? All the records are gone. So you're not going to see any records there. They used the period to clean up the records. So if you're going to go there and find out how much money has been transferred to which ministers' relatives and stuff like that, you're not going to get it anymore. That's what they use. And so that's what the WPA, because I gather she came from the WPA. So that's what they want us to do, to desired extension, to do this sort of thing. And to go around and lie to people about, I see the direct cash transfer. And I want to thank Carl Greenidge for really standing up and taking a decent position on the issue. If we have to help our people, and we in the PPP don't rule out cash transfers to individual vulnerable groups, but you have to match also revenue with what we are going to have to give out. And so if Jordan himself said in the first year we get $100 million, and if it goes to even $300 million a year, and you have so many competing needs for education and infrastructure and raising public service salaries and everything else, and for help to our industries, that's a $300 million there, and improve the lives of our pensioners. How could you then fund all of those things from this money and still give out $1 billion a year? Because at 5,000 times 200,000 households per year, that's $1 billion US, and you're receiving $100 to $300 million. And you have all these competing demands. It's just an election chat to raise people's expectation that they'll get free money if they vote again for APNU. And this is the sort of lies they're telling. So consistent with that, consistent with a new set of promises, government to establish special unit to deal with Amerindian land titling. This is Sidney Allicock now, not to be outdone by his colleagues. He has gone into the promising game now. Well, we had a unit like this, the land titling unit. 3 weeks after they got into office, they dismantled it. We left $10.2 million US to fund this unit, over $2 billion. In fact, it's $2.2 billion, so it'll be a little bit more than $10.2 million US to fund Amerindian land titling. We left the money, we left the unit. They scrapped the unit And until now, they have not titled one new Amerindian community. Not a single one. But now that they're in the no confidence period, they're establishing a special unit to do Amerindian land titling. Bunch of lies. The people, the decency must be running away out of shame to be associated with them. You must be running away from them, decency, if you personify decency. This thing is unbelievable. So that's what is on. Jordan went, made a statement, that the no confidence motion is not affecting the economy or anything else. And now he says, political climate dampens investors' buyout of Gaisuko estates. Just said it's not affecting the country and the economy. And then he goes to say that it's affecting the buyout of Gaisuko estates. Well, it's not just the politics. But the SPU has taken over all Gaisuko's assets and been privatizing them without any public process, in secret deals with a lot of people. So I saw in Trinidad, they were a little bit upset, and Antigua News had something about, I said at my press conference, there are lots of carpetbaggers who are coming into Guyana, non-Guyanese, who are in secret deals with this government, cleaning up prime real estates and everything else. And I lamented the fact that very little would be left for Guyanese. But I also said we welcome investors, but if you come here, you have to work transparently, not carpetbaggers flowing through here, and before we know it, there are no opportunities for our people. Before you know it. And that is what is being done. Not that I have anything against Trinidadians or anyone else for coming here, investors. But that's the spin they're putting. But what I had problems with is when this government, in this period of illegality, and had a caretaker role, went to an investors conference in Trinidad paid by taxpayers. And after the investors conference was working out private deals, people go and make a pledge to them about how much money they will get. They will give them for the campaign, and then they were sent to say, we'll give you some land in Guyana, at Diamond and all these places. If you go to the back of Diamond, that's where they're giving out a lot of the lands there. Back of Diamond, Wales Estate, the estate just by Pradoville 1, the whole stretch there, at the back there. And they've already started moving where the new road alignment would go to give out the lands on both sides of the alignment. All of this, secret deals. Their specialty hospital one, I heard it's either gone or negotiating there at Lilendal. So we don't hear about this. I hope that you can, the last press conference I said, why not go to the head of Go Invest and ask him, or Bulkan, or this guy from the SPU, Heat London. Ask them how many plots of land have you sold, and these were they publicly tendered? Were they publicly tendered, and what price did you get for them? This is the sort of question. So that is what is affecting. So it's not that the political climate at Rose Hall, the people don't want to come and buy, because I've already made it clear that when PricewaterhouseCoopers came and did the asset register, they're now taking from the productive assets and shifting it over to unproductive asset register and then selling those off. So the functioning machinery and equipment, they put a guy there, and he's just transferring these things and selling them off. So if you're coming to buy now and you look at the asset register and you're putting in a price, you will then see half of the things are already gone. They're selling them out here on a daily basis. I heard they even want to sell out the cattle now that used to pull the punts there at Rose Hall. They've gone through almost everything. It's unbelievable what's going on now. Everybody is in a little hustle before the elections come. Everyone is in a little hustle. So that's what they should be dealing with. Now, government considering salary package for public servants, and they want to give They want to announce how much they will give in the next term. You know, so now all along, we had to fight. I had to make public statements. I spoke to the president personally, said, why can't you meet with the teachers union? We had a multi-year agreement, as a result of which they got a salary increase, a large number of duty-free vehicles for teachers. We gave them a housing grant every year that a sum of money will flow from the Treasury into that housing fund for teachers. We worked out a whole package, and that was a multi-year agreement. The first 3 years of this government, when we back up to the 4th year, they refused to deal with the non-salary benefits of the teachers, refused to give them the duty-free concession. It's only after the no confidence motion that they started working on all of these things. Suddenly they love teachers. We were fighting for them to get to respect the agreement with the teachers, the multi-year agreement. Now I hear Jordan wants to work on a multi-year agreement with the teachers. You should see the struggle that the teachers went through. Even when the teachers protested and they promised this big increase, ask the teachers what their pay slip was like on January of this year. They promised this, that the differentials would be paid. They're increasing what the teachers got, and that the differential would be paid in January 1 of this year, from last year. Find out how it benefited the teachers. Minuscule increases. But suddenly now they love public servants once again in this period. So they're a mad scramble. But if people believe this, then I can't help them. Or nobody could help with that, because it means you're a sucker for punishment. A sucker for punishment if you actually believe this. Jordan says, we can't pass next year, you go to 112. What we've been saying, if the elections are not held by the end of the year, you move, there's no budget, you have to go to 112 provision. Now we woke up to this. And then we need a special place for Ramjatan. This Ramjatan is like, I just don't understand. You see him and he could speak like perfectly reasonable sometimes. And then he says these things, and you know what I feel has been happening. You smiling, you know what I'm aiming towards. Because I have to question whether he's sober most of the time, because he says these crazy things about people are to be blamed for crime, a whole set of nonsense. But he himself said, and on the registration thing, he was on the program, and this is what a lawyer said, that the public security minister said, registration of all Guyanese is mandatory, and it is also desirable on the part of government and citizens, since if persons are not registered, they cannot vote, which means persons will be disenfranchise themselves. Well, Ramjatan, the expression should be used, his own expression should be used. The Chief Justice's decision has proven this wrong. This was what they were peddling all along. This is what he was peddling. And this betrays the objective of what they were hoping to achieve, and that the ruling of the court stopped. It betrays the objective of what is there. I just want to, well, maybe I should just end there and I deal with some other issues in the question and answer period. Thank you. Yeah, sure.
You said you're seeing the government is unconstitutional now. What's next?
What's next is claims, and I'm hoping that GCOM will move swiftly to claims and objection, recognizing that this is a futile exercise that they're embarked upon, that is wasting money, that will be done swiftly, and that we can move at GCOM early preparation for early elections. And I hope that the president here has a modicum of residual decency to dissolve the parliament and call the election now. We have already been keeping people briefed, and I know that many have been in contact with the government. Many of them have been in contact with the government to let their positions, to have their positions known.
I understand that you're saying the ruling is a victory in that it says that House shouldn't be used as a tool to deregister LMIs. But I thought that the goal was to have elections held in the shortest possible time. So are you satisfied that this ruling will set things in motion so that elections will be held in the short possible time?
So the shortest possible time means getting a new OLE, official list of electors. The list OLE expired in April 30th. Remember, elections were supposed to be held by March 21st. The one way of refreshing the list is through claims and objections. So that is why we believe that the ruling here shows that this exercise, house-to-house registration, simply cannot be pursued in the manner that they want to do it. That is to deregister people and create a new database. So if the existing database could be preserved and is preserved now, then one way of getting people on that database who have not had the opportunity to be there is through the claims and objection. So they'll move swiftly to that. And then once that is done, they then extract the PLE. They would extract the PLE now, and then through the claims and objections, people come in. And at the end of that exercise, you have an OLE, and you move to elections.
So you're expecting GCOM to stop house-to-house?
Yes, I'm expecting that that it will be stopped given this ruling, because why do you still persist? If you come to my home now and say to me, you have to register, and I say, I'm not registering, but you can't remove my name, and you're asking me to register again, and I'm already registered, and you can't remove my name. What's the common sense? It's common sense. You know, you're wasting our money. It's over $1 billion. In fact, maybe about $2 billion they've spent on this. I don't want the enumerators to lose out. So that's why I suggested, because they were trained, that you pay the enumerators some cash for the rest of the exercise. You know, like an ex gratia payment, a lump sum, and say to them, and see how many of them you can use back in, you know, other activities like the continuous registration, whereby by going to claims and objections. And that would allow us to move forward swiftly.
Okay, you said that the extension of the CGX contract is not valid. Is it that you have to take it under advisement to decide whether you revoke that? Or
we revoke that, the extension. We're not treating it as valid. Okay. Nothing in the period that the CGX contract. We're not, the government doesn't have the authority to extend anything.
Okay, yesterday, Minister Winston Jordan said that the opposition has yet refused to name someone to the committee for the Natural Resource Fund. Aren't you worried that so close to first file, we won't have our NRF operationalized if someone is not named?
But our differences are more fundamental than just sitting on the body. I think one had pointed this out in a letter to him when he wrote me. There was a reply. I asked Bishop Edgehill, and he replied to Jordan, and why we will not participate. But let me reiterate that one, they had a long period to pass the Sovereign Wealth Fund. They delayed it, etc. Then they tabled the national, the Sovereign Wealth Fund, and passed it in the period after the no confidence vote. And so as far as we're concerned, it is illegal too. The Sovereign Wealth Fund, and we said we will repeal it and replace it in a very short period with another model that reflects some of the principles that we've outlined and we will outline in our manifesto. So the Santiago Principles on Transparency and Norwegian type management, which brings the management of the fund, places it at distance from the politicians. That is the one.
And that won't
So,
delay production.
no. That production takes place. The money could be placed in an escrow account but in a central bank and nobody touches it. We publish how much money, we gazette how much we receive, and the money is there. You don't touch it. In any case, they can't spend any money because there's no budget. Okay, before the next, and forest oil will probably come after the elections. So this is important, but let me give you a couple of things. Yesterday I was speaking to the youth parliamentarians, and they're concerned. And I said to them, the differences are fundamental. The minister, according to the legislation, if you look at the act, the minister is overall in charge of the fund. Then the central bank, which reports to the minister, is in charge of the operation of the fund. Then the minister names a macroeconomic committee that is advisory to him and that his ministry chairs, that will advise him on determining the economically feasible amount to be withdrawn from the fund. Then the minister names an investment committee, and the investment committee will be advisory to him and to set up the investment mandate. And then the minister, in his personal capacity, will determine the fiscally sustainable sum to withdraw. What is common in every one of those 5 issues? It's the minister. Every one. That's the management structure of the fund. And you cannot have that. It's a recipe for chaos, disaster. We go back straight, we'll destroy the economy, and we'll have a ton of corruption if you do that. You have to distance the politicians from that. The politicians get involved when they're independently verified assessment based on formulas that you put forward. And these independently verified assessments should go directly to the National Assembly to be debated there. And that's when the politicians could say, yes, this amount is withdrawn and this is what it's going to go for. So the model that they pass is a model that we have no faith in. It destroys some fundamental principles of how you manage any windfall resource.
Okay, some criticisms have mounted over government's ability to regulate oil companies' activities offshore, specifically like how much oil they use for their operations and so on. Do you think that Guyana should be jumping into first oil so quickly when it can't regulate, or do you have a plan?
You can't stop the production of forest oil because a lot of investment has been made, and we should accelerate production of oil. But the government has to seize its responsibility with a sense of the gravity of the situation and with an understanding of its mandate to protect our nation. And this is what I don't understand, that there is no sense of urgency. There is no understanding of the seriousness of the issue. And there is an abdication of their responsibility to protect us and our nation. And when you have that, the companies can run amok. So the idea is not to stop oil production, but is to make sure that we build those capabilities. And we have a government that does that. We want to offer that the PPP will be that sort of government, so that will do all of those things. Because you can do these things pretty swiftly if you're focused on it heavily, and you have people who can give leadership and take advice and come up with solutions quickly. This government farms everything out. Bino talks a lot, but all of it is just like like he reads some textbook or something. Well, he had no experience in this sector. He's an environmental person. I'd be a good environmental person, but nothing. And so even that, right now we had the first oil from Tullow discovery, but the Tullow contract that was signed by Trotman is even worse than the CGX one. And you know that there is a provision in all the oil contracts that we've had, because when they were exploring from 1999, etc., before we found oil, that the royalty will be part of the profit oil. So you're not getting royalty on top of profit oil, it's part of profit oil. If you check I think it's 15 of the contract, it says taxation and royalty, I think. Check that. So the old contracts under the PPP, they had that too, but that was pre-oil.
The Tullow contract.
Yes, the Tullow one. So I'm telling you about all the contracts under the PPP too, from 1999 had that feature, but that was before you found oil. We had to be generous. Now, when Trotman signed the Tullow contract, we had already found oil. That was 2016. He signed it in 2016. We had 3 billion barrels of proven reserve. One would think that the royalty would be in addition to the profit oil we are getting. As it is in the Exxon contract, it is in addition. In Tullow contract, we have to pay the profit oil. We have to pay the royalty for Tullow. The government pays Tullow's royalty now. So it's not in addition to. And there are other features. I didn't want to get into that today because there are lots of things. We made it clear that after that contract was signed, the CGX, and that's not CGX, the Exxon contract, that set some standards. And there was an agreement that no other company must get any benefits that are equivalent to what Exxon got or better. And that the PPP will review any other contract that has benefits that exceed those of Exxon or akin to those of Exxon in the future. That position still remains today. It remains today. So that cannot be allowed to succeed, that we have to end up paying the royalty for Tullow from our share of profit oil that Trotman signed on to, because he did it when we had already found oil. That's the difference between doing it like the Ramatar or Janet Jagan, because we are looking for investors at that time. We were a bit generous. He did it after we found oil. And so people don't even look at, so Exxon takes a lot of heat, but the Tullow contract is even worse.
Okay, lastly.
You should look at it.
You haven't made any comments about the mid-year report.
Oh, I didn't want to, Jordan, nonsense. I have it. I'm going to go through it in great detail.
Okay.
But it's the same thing I dealt with last week. Jordan likes to go and pull down a couple of things from the central bank and all of that and talks about growth rate. You walk the street. 2 Saturdays ago, I was on the road talking to some young kids and stuff. And you will find out what's going on the ground. This government does not understand how many people have lost their jobs, that their taxation policy and the shrinking of the economy in every sector outside of the oil and gas sector, because of the investments in that area now, has created pools of unemployed people that were employed in the past. They've dried up money in circulation, because if you take $88 billion more in taxes per year than in the period when the PPP was there, he doesn't understand what's going on the road. It's the taxi drivers, it's the people, the construction people, it is the farmers who come from across the country, the workers, the people who came to me from Ichuni just earlier this week, can't sell their logs, the loggers. Miners come here all the time, the roads are impossible, they can't do anything. They get harassed for fuel, and then Van West brings away all the fuel here. This sort of thing. He doesn't understand that. So he loves to go and, oh, these reports, 4.6% growth. But look at all of the sectors that generate employment. The oil and gas sector, outside of getting a few high-paying jobs offshore and some impact on real estate prices here. And that impact on real estate prices too will cause Guyanese now can't afford properties anymore in the city. That's why we said we have to open up lots of new land so that they can get a stake of the country. We don't become like some of the region countries in the region where foreigners own everything.
Mr. Jagdeo, Guyanese critic.
Yeah, sure.
You're saying a lot about what is going to be done when the PPP comes to power again. The PPP presidential candidate is Irfan Ali. Since you're saying it, what guarantees do we have that he will keep to those obligations?
Sure, and Irfan Ali has said over and over again that he is a presidential candidate of the People's Progressive Party. He works on a program that we are developing. You're going to see all of these outlined in a program that Irfan Ali will launch as our program for the future. He works as part of a collective, and he's made it clear without any distinction or hemming and hawing. He will implement a program that the People's Progressive Party put forward at the next elections, and these things will be part of the program. I made it clear too that my role as General Secretary of the party, I have a responsibility to ensure that what we say here, the promises we make, we keep them. That it will be my role to ensure that that happens, because it's the party that is making these promises. He is the person that we've entrusted to carry our program forward with a team of people that will be with him. He is the person that we've entrusted. So everything that we say, we intend to put in place, and you will see it written up as part of our manifesto. And we're not. Some people came up to a few days ago, and they got a long list of things that they want done. I know they're making suggestions, even at this late stage, we're wrapping up our manifesto and stuff like that. And I said to them, no, we can't. We had a team, and we can't do it. We're not going to make a promise that we can't deliver, because unlike APNU, we're sitting down and calculating every single promise. So Irfan Ali has pointed out that we are seriously contemplating about university education, free university education, not like this government that promised something and then increased it by the fees at UG by 35% in their tenure. And so we are costing that to see how we can structure it. We'll have to rehabilitate on a yearly basis 2,000 kilometers of roads in the hinterland for the miners, for forestry people, and Amerindians. We have costed that already. We have to find out where it's coming from. We have to return the School Kids Grant. That's about $1.7 billion a year. We've decided where it's going to come from. We have to get back the pensioners' subsidy. That's about $800 million a year, water subsidy for pensioners. Every single measure we have, we are looking at it. All of this, with the reversal of taxes, a whole range of taxes on machinery and equipment and all of that. We've looked at the budgetary implications, and we also looked at where the cost savings are coming, because there are a lot of extravagant activities that this government is pursuing. For example, the budget this year alone is $1.1 billion for ministerial travel and subsistence, local. 1.1 billion increase, I'm talking only about the increase from 2014. And then they went for a supplementary for another few $100 million for their outreach. That's 1.5 billion alone for local travel by ministers and dietary. Now this is excluding the foreign travel. That's how much they've increased that by. But the School Kids Grant was costing them $1.7 billion, 1.67, 167,000 students at that time. So they choose to spend this on their outreach and ministerial travel, local, well, just now only outreach, but ministerial travel and subsistence, than to spend it on these kids. You should see what goes on at Ogle. When these ministers travel, they hire aircraft, they just rather than just take a seat on a plane or go somewhere else. They will huge entourage. Take the prime hotels, they get massive subsistence. Every night they spend out of town, they spend hundreds of thousands of dollars for food and basic stuff. You see, the outreach they say, and they're giving some stuff for their Amerindian communities. If they're spending, I pointed out, if they use 40 million for an outreach, it's about 10 million really gets to the community. 30 million goes to rent tent from their friends, buy food from their friends, go airline travel from their friends, one man in particular, and that sort of thing. Siphon the money off. Everything is a little hustle now. And so these outreaches are new. So that's what I'm saying to you, that Irfan Ali has made it clear. He is implementing. He's not going in there with an Irfan Ali program. He's mandated, chosen by our party to lead this process of implementing our plan for the future.
History is recorded, and it shows that politicians over the years have promised, and many times from both sides, the PPP and the PNC, have failed to deliver on those promises.
Sure.
Again, you come forth and speak of what you will do for the educational system, what you will do for infrastructure. In recent history, we see that the politicians can be held to uphold the Constitution and respect law. What does the PPP, with their intention of moving forward, plan to do about holding themselves accountable? Because you realize that everybody running them up right now.
All right. So you're right, but I want to differ a bit. I want to ask you to read our manifesto, and you will see the promises that we made in the past, because we're careful about that all the time, about being too distant. So we didn't achieve 100%, and we overperform in some other areas, but we never achieve 100%. But you would see the bulk of the manifesto promises, we delivered on it. And there's no doubt that we took a bankrupt country. I dealt with that at the last press conference. A bankrupt country, and left it as with the most heavily indebted country in this region, not just Caribbean, but Latin America, and left it as the country with the lowest debt in the region. We left it as the fastest growing economy in the region. Our gross domestic product moved from $300 million to nearly $4 billion. Per capita income grew. Our roads, we started getting roads to drive on from the past. People started finding more jobs. Not perfect, but we move our country forward in spite of the obstacles of having to repay a large sum of debt. So we kept that. On infrastructure, look at the infrastructure. The Marriott is there. They said it is corrupt. Marriott was built. Almost the stadium was built. We move not just the basic infrastructure. We started moving to a different level. The Hope Canal to save the people from flooding. The new airport. A ton of, we would have had the hydro performing by now had they not stopped it, and cheaper electricity. So we believe we made progress on that too, working towards it. And even what they're doing now, the Sheriff Street thing, we left 66 million US for that and some other money for elsewhere. The project was to do Sheriff Street and other areas, Sophia, etc. The East Coast Road, we left that. So almost everything that they have not come up with a new plan. And so accountability now. On accountability, we had 10 years gap where there are no audited accounts for Guyana. When we got into office, no audited accounts for Guyana. And you know, Gulsaran likes to speak a lot now. He was Auditor General for many of those years. You should ask him, why is it in your tenure as Auditor General under the PNC, you never produce audited accounts for the country? And then maybe he will explain to you what happened then and how he managed to get the accounts from 1992 to 2014, every single year we presented audited accounts for the country. Audited accounts for the country with a 10 years gap before that. That's one. Two, the Integrity Commission. In the year 2000, we passed the law. From the year 2000, we had to submit our income statements and our asset statements. If you make false statement, you go to jail. If you don't submit, you can go to jail. Every single year we've submitted our people from the cabinet from 2000 to 2014, 2015. I've submitted all the years I was president. And this government, many of them in opposition never submitted. In the 4 years they've been in office, they've submitted once, and President Granger has not even submitted up to now. And they dismantle the Secretariat. Thirdly, we passed one of the most advanced procurement laws. Now we removed the cabinet from awarding contracts. We said you only have a no objection role now, and you can only exercise the no objection role with reasons. They've restored that back. They don't go to tender for anything. Look at this year alone. In the ministerial tender board, they raised the limits. So Patterson and the others, he's given out billions of dollars of contract without any public process, and at the ministry level. They raised the limits. So the ministerial tender board is now higher. That was there. We then moved to introduce program budgeting, which focuses more on management of expenditure. We set up the Revenue Authority. We passed a new Bank of Guyana Act. We passed the Financial Institutions Act. We passed new insurance legislation. We passed a stock exchange law. All of this was to improve financial accountability and architecture, the financial architecture of the country. And so, what are the things? So let's look at oil and gas now, because everybody says, oh, everyone wants to steal the money. So we made it clear. When they took the 18 million, we didn't know about it. You know what happened in Guyana. It took a year and a half to find out that they actually got it. Jordan lied in another country. He'd been in jail or by now resigned. He said, we never requested nor did we receive it. And it was his ministry that received it and put it in an account that is not the consolidated fund or in the central bank balance sheet. So what happened? 3 years, we had 3 budgets, 2017, 2018, 2019. And you know, the accounts of the country are presented at budget time. The 18 million missing from the account of the country. 18 million missing. It is unconstitutional, illegal. The FMAA and the Constitution says money must be paid into the consolidated fund, 1, 2, a deposit fund, all public monies, but you must notify the Parliament, or 3, in funds set up by special legislation. None of those were observed. This is what they did. So what did our promise say? We said within a few months of being in office, we will criminalize non-disclosure of money from oil companies. We will pass a law to say that within 2 to 3 months of the receipt of any money from any oil company, that the sum has to be gazetted in the official gazette. And 2, you have to notify the Parliament. Failing which, the Minister of Finance and the Secretary to the Treasury goes to jail for 10 years. That's the legislation must say. So now in the future, no minister could do that. And every single Guyanese now, all you have to do is to go and buy the official gazette for the year and total up. And you will know how much money we receive. Every single citizen will know how much money we receive for the year from all oil companies, oil revenue. So there is then you can say, where is it being spent? So that is how we intend, in very specific ways, to target some of what we have disclosed. Strengthen back the Integrity Commission law. Go after beneficial ownership. Strengthen the extractive industry transparency initiative. So like when ministers, like some of these ministers now have all the mining leases. You see those syndicates? There are front farm ministers owning big properties in the hinterland and stuff like that. All of that because we'll go after beneficial ownership. These are some of the ways, just some of the ways. I want to give you a couple of examples. And by the way, they used to say a lot about corruption under the PPP. So I must come back to this now. They have had a chance to scour every one of our accounts. They've had a chance to go through all of our property holdings and stuff like that in Ghana. And until now, they've not had a single person who is charged for having money in an account that they shouldn't have or inconsistent with their declarations to the Integrity Commission. I suggested to President Granger, let's trace the assets of former government officials, including former presidents and current people in the government. They refuse to do that abroad because we know what we'll find, and we will do it. We'll trace their assets on our own and make it public. We'll hire a firm to do that. So Guyanese will know who is speaking the truth. That is the thing. They talk about corruption. You think if they had found anything major by now, it wouldn't have been all over the place? This is important. Yeah, sure, no problem.
Has Mercury been doing their job effectively?
Effectively or not, that's a judgment call, but we've re-engaged Mercury. Okay.
From Housetohouse, good afternoon. Last week you spoke about the new terrorist group in Ghana, the Broadcast Authority.
Oh, yeah.
I just want to pick up on that. It's important to know that about 8:23 over the weekend, Saturday it was, the NCNA were broadcasting a show that happened on Emancipation Day. And I just want to know if you think it's biased or not. But the song, it was promoting marijuana and not just smoking and stuff like that. It was uncensored. So I'm just kind of curious as to if they're not terrorizing the NCA as well, if they're being biased towards them. It was a song about ganja performed by a Jamaican artist.
You see, I'm a politician. I'm not a censor in all of those things. For me, I'm a liberal person. I believe what happens in people's bedroom and their private affairs and their family, that's their business. And where the public areas, particularly a government station, is involved, it has to carry out government policy. Well, not government, but national policy. And so it should not do anything that's inconsistent with government or national policy at this stage now. That is not fair criticism, but I mean, like, promoting anything. I saw the newspapers sought to make it look like it was just Freedom Radio that was having trouble with the National Broadcast Authority.
If that was uncensored, then maybe that is validated by them having such a performance on here.
Oh, no. But I'm saying it's not only Freedom Radio, but several others who are perceived as unfriendly to the government, that unsympathetic, they are being targeted. They're being targeted. So I think they can, some of the things I heard Basil and the others say should be really censored. But the government stations and stuff don't get any of that.
Okay, so I take that.
It's bias.
It's biased. And
Yeah.
one other question. If the current government, they continue to prolong the elections, Minister Jordan recently was speaking about the government, they can't pass the budget unless we have the elections first, and then on 1/12th, and 1/12th only represents 1 month of the entire calendar. So is the current government, in a sense, trying to instigate a bottleneck of Ghana's economy and then pin the blame on the PPP?
They're always, I like the question because it's true. This is everything. Remember they used to say when the economy dried up, they started calling us that we're responsible for lack of investment coming here. It's your policies. It's your policies. Your policies are not clear. And so they tend to blame the PPP for almost anything bad that happens. And we've been forewarning this. We've been saying already the private sector spending, if you look at credit to the private sector in the aggregate, like the monetary survey, if you go to the Bank of Guyana report, you will look at the monetary survey and you will see credit to the private sector is now grown significantly. And then the investment is concentrated now in a few, like the oil and gas sector. So if you look at net investment flows that are from the private sector, it's actually declining. So the government spending, which is a huge amount of money, although you don't get the details, and wasted, most of it, a lot wasted, it's not used to support industry or to support welfare, has propped things up a bit. But if you now have to move to the 112 rule and you remove government spending and already private sector spending is depressed, what you do, you reduce aggregate demand in the whole system, and then you're going to have more people losing jobs, etc. And then, of course, the PPP gets the blame for all the time. Oh, you didn't extend the life of the government. Never mind, they should have held elections since March of the year. You didn't extend life, so you're to be blamed for us not being able to spend more in the economy. That is precisely where it's heading.
And one more question, if you will. Based on the 4.5, well, the 4% growth that was announced by Mr. Jordan, do you think that is to pay homage and respect to the $88 billion that's collected in taxes? That it's really not just a growth of the Guyanese economy, but more money stripped out of the Guyanese pockets?
There are two things. One is on a revenue basis, and one is on value added, the addition of value added. So I don't want to dispute a figure because as yet, because I don't do that. I know for sure they're collecting $88 billion more in taxes from our people per year than the PPP was collecting. We are at 135, they're 230 something, 220 something, I think. And so I know that for sure. But when growth is enclavic, you got to look at the nature of growth. So you have growth that generates employment and growth that may be capital intensive but doesn't generate employment. So on the oil and gas side, we've seen some buoyancy. So that you'll have a higher growth rate, but growth rate doesn't translate into more money in people's pockets or more jobs to them. You could have jobless growth. That is the issue, especially in capital intensive sectors. And this is what he doesn't understand. That's why I started off by saying they don't go on the ground. They sit in their offices and look at the figures, and he goes and lectures about 4.6% growth. Yeah, anyone else? Thank you. All right.